You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Alvin and Virginia were institutions.
Hi, I'm Joe Iconis.
And I'm Jennifer Ashley Tepper.
You're listening to the Album Podcast, and on this week's episode, we're talking about my song 52.
This is unsurprisingly one of my favorite Joe Iconis songs, and one of my favorite episodes we've done. This number was recorded by Danny Burstein on the album, also very exciting.
Yeah, and there's so much in the song about history and theater and legacy, and I think we hit all those topics, so listen up.
Listen up, nerds.
They both survived some seasons of dangerous weather. They taught me this lesson on how to live. They'd say, remember.
52.
52, it's a special one.
It is a special one.
I always refer to this song as the subject of one of the last fights we ever had.
It was.
So how did this song get written? Take us from the beginning.
The song was written for a concert that was produced by Jennifer Ashley Tepper that was held at Joe's Pub. And the concert was songs about New York.
Yeah, so it was like New York City, or someone who changed New York City for you was the prompt to the writers.
And so I wrote 52, and the circumstances around me writing it was that I waited to the last minute, because I always wait to the last minute when it comes to a deadline or something. I think about things a lot, and then it's usually right before I have to hand in the thing, or slightly after I have to hand in the thing is when I do it. And so right before this concert, we were doing an Iconis and family gig at Barrington Stage Company. So we were at Barrington, and I was working on the song, but it wasn't fully coming, and it was sort of like, this happens to me all the time. I'm doing a million things at the same time, doing this concert, writing this song, and then I was doing a Hunter S. Thompson thing. I had to go and do some sort of Hunter S. Thompson like writing thing right when I got back from Barrington. It was like a crazy day. And so I ended up not having the song until like hours before the concert. It was literal hours before the concert. And Tepper had asked for the song, a week before or something. It was like a totally appropriate amount of time that I should have given it to her, and I didn't. And she was very mad at me.
What was funny was, I think part of it might have, correct me if I'm wrong, been because of what the song was, like the topic of the song, you didn't want to tell me anything about it.
Yeah.
So part of it was that it was 12 writers or whatever who were writing songs, and it was like me as the producer being like, okay, like what order should the concert be performed in, and like who should do this, and like whatever. And it was like, I kind of hit my wit's end of like, oh, my best friend who's doing the concert is the only person who's like not submitted his song. It was a very silly fight. We had one fight after this years later about you asking Bailey to draw a frog when we were in tech, and those are the last two fights that Joe Iconis and I ever had. But anyway, no, and I think,
But but I mean, also, that's also the ultimate me, where I'm like, I'm not going to hand it in when I'm supposed to hand it in, and also I'm going to be secretive about it, because I really want, I want to like keep the secret. Yeah. But yes, I could see how on the other side, you were probably just like, he hasn't even done anything, and he's like, he doesn't care, which is, it's hard.
It was like a decade ago.
It was.
Yeah. And then you came in with this song, which like is the song to end all songs for me, the musical theater historian and person that I am. This is like one of my favorite songs you've ever written.
Thanks. And I really, I obviously you were the person who prompted the song, but it was a song that I like deeply, cared about, and you so inspired the song itself. Like you, as a person, and our friendship, but just your passions and your existence as a theater historian, the way that you think about theater and the way you talk about theater and the way that you communicate your feelings about theater is something that just so baked into the song and kind of made it happen.
Yeah. This song also, it appears, I asked you if we could include the lyrics in my first book, because the song is about the Alvin Theater, the Virginia Theater, which are both in the first volume of Untold Stories of Broadway. And like I have a framed version of the lyric that you gave me for my birthday one year. It's like on my wall in my apartment. It's like a song that's taken on a lot of meaning. And it's had like so many meaningful performances, especially the first one, which I want to talk about. But just to jump around in time a little bit, I was thinking so much with the 10th anniversary of 54 Below of the moment when Jack O'Brien, who's like known as a director and like, incredible Tony Award winning Jack O'Brien, asked you if he could sing this in the concert that he did where he actually like sang and told stories. And I was sitting directly in front of Mike Nichols and Diane Sawyer. And it was like shortly before Mike Nichols passed. And I was just like, it was just operating on so many levels. This song of yours, which is about like theater history and legacy and so many things, to have like, all of those people in the room and just experiencing it. It's like one of my favorite 54 Below moments.
Yeah, me too. That was one of, my songs haven't been covered by people like that all that much. Obviously I had very amazing singers sing my stuff, but that was like the wildest thing. Where it was like Jack O'Brien wants to sing my song. That was so incredible. It really, really blew my mind.
But that original performance, which if I'm getting it right, like you guys rehearsed it in the car on the way home from Barrington.
100%. So the performance was me singing, lead, and then it was Eric William Morris, Molly Hager, and Jason Sweet Williams singing backup. And they did it because we learned it in the car coming home from Barrington. I wrote the song at Reba and Bruce's house in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and then and it was like, I was just like, guys, I need help. And they were like, sure. And they weren't even supposed to like, they weren't supposed to do the concert. But they all were like, yeah, we can do that. And they learned the song and they performed it in the concert that night.
It's the most like incredible, beautiful performance. Like that video is just like, really also nice. It was another magical, mystical thing about the song that like, I had never been to Reba and Bruce's house, which is like, the center of all activities that go on at Barrington Stage. They're the most like wonderful people. And we later, you already had some time there, but I later came to spend so much time there, being at Barrington for different shows. And like when I was there and you said, oh, like, I wrote 52 mostly in this room, it like put a whole other layer on the song.
Yeah.
I also, folks listening on your phones or I guess iPods, if you're really cool and manage to load the album onto your iPod, I really like to listen to this song like standing on 52nd Street, like in between the theaters. It's a very like visceral experience.
In between, like in the middle of the street.
Yeah. You can do that, No one's gonna stop you.
Yeah. And I'm so grateful that Danny Burstein agreed to sing the song.
It's sort of actually similar to Alan H. Green singing 64, where it's like, what a perfect person to sing the song. And like, they hadn't sung it before. Like, what a incredible melding of actor and song.
Yeah, I've been a very vocal fan of Danny's for many, many years. I just love him. He's just so my type of actor, so my type of, theater personality. I like the way he, conducts his life. I think he's so great. He's just given so many incredible performances, and I've always wanted to work with him. It's never quite, worked out for him to do a show of mine, and I've asked him to do every concert I've ever done, and he always says no. He's always very nice, but because he's like, I just don't do concerts. That's not my thing. I don't know how to do that, and I don't want to do it. And so I was nervous about asking him to sing 52 because he truly, it was like, oh man, this is the song for Danny Burstein.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know what he would say because he, he's just not like a concert guy, which I also respect. How cool is that? Like, I so respect that. He's like, that's not my thing. I don't do it. I sent him the song, and then he wrote back very quickly and just said that he really loved it and would like to sing it.
It's also like he, as a leader of the theater community, as a leader of cast of shows that he's done, he just embodies the respect for legacy and the continuation between generations that like the song is about. Like it's such a crazy, it's like in him. It was magical to watch him record it.
Yeah. Well, he basically is a theater. It's like in the way that all of these the memories and the people and the experiences of shows past live in the walls of theaters. It feels like he's done so many shows, and he really does. He feels like he's from another time, even though he's he's in our time. It's happening right now. Danny Burstein is here right now for all of us to enjoy. He's just such a man of the theater and has worked with so many, titans of the theater, and he is such a bridge between then and now. I think it feels really, really, really appropriate that he sings this tune. And I got to rehearse it with him in his apartment, and it's like something that I'll never forget. And also, I've met a lot of people in this business, and I'm usually really good about like chatting with people. Like I've gotten good at like small talk, and I don't, I'm good at like being very sort of like straight and chill with people who are either really famous or whatever. But Danny Burstein is someone who I am just like starstruck by, and I feel like I turn into the 13-year-old version of myself when I'm around. And it's like I've gotten like okay at it, but I just cannot be cool around that guy. I just can't. And that's why I want to work on a show with him, because then I think we'll have a rapport and I'll feel like, okay, he's just a guy, he's just Danny Burstein. But I just cannot be chill around that man. I'd love him so much.
I definitely agree. And that also like, first of all, if I was like hard pressed and had to write down like my 20 favorite performances I've ever seen on Broadway, I think Danny Burstein did 2 of them. Like, his performance as Tevye and his performance in Follies as Buddy was just like both and I feel the exact same way as you. And I remember when he was in the studio and we all were just like, it's Danny Burstein. And like, he's obviously like, he's so chill. He's so down to earth.
He's so nice. He's so easy to be around. Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because it's just, and I feel this way also similarly, like they're extremely famous people who I could have small talk with no problem, even though I respect them. But then it's like you put me in a room with Bill Finn and I'm like, I can't even speak words. And I do get that about Danny. And I think everyone in our Joe Iconis and family group who was there that day felt that. Like it just was so special to have him be part of it. Like we all just so admire him.
Yeah.
And also just like to have this, I don't know, the fact that he sang 52, I think I'm still not over it. It hasn't fully registered.
I know. And he is just, I feel like we're speaking so much just about the fact that he exists and it's, and how cool that he is, that he is a person walking around who sang the song, but he's just so good. He's like, his performance of this song, it's like, he's someone who does theater. Like Danny Burstein is not like fronting rock bands, but he's able to like do this sort of casual folky thing while also making you feel like it's a theater song in such an amazing, effortless way.
Yeah. It's also interesting. Like I've interviewed Danny about theaters, obviously, like for my book, and I don't think he's worked at the Alvin or the Virginia, and not that that matters. It doesn't. But it's like he embodies this song. Like he's certainly lived through epidemics and revolutions, but like the fact that this song, this song is so specific. It's so like the lyrics are so specific. Like, but you could be singing this about 2 restaurants in your hometown. Like you could be singing. It has like a level of just how places come into our lives and are important that I think it fully matters that it's the Alvin and Virginia, and then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, 100%. And and I think in the way that 64 is kind of about the complicated nature of nostalgia. This is, I think, is more about history and legacy and more about how it's important. It's worth our time. It's
also like, it's such a specific thing, the way that something can change its name and that matters. Like that's so it's not meaningless that like, even though the street might be exactly the same the day after the marquee gets changed, it's a different thing when you change the name. And like this song puts that into feelings in a way that nothing else I know ever has, of like, it was different when it was the Alvin and the Virginia than it is when it's the Neil Simon and the August Wilson. And like people that live in places like New York and people who are aware of the buildings and the places and the theaters around them, no matter where they live, it's like you understand that that's such a specific element of legacy and history when like names get changed.
Yeah. And it's such a hard thing to pinpoint or to articulate, because it's like it is the theaters are the theaters, they're the same basically, and sometimes they get a paint job or they get a whatever, and they change a little bit, but they're still the theaters, and that's great. But it's different. It just is, and it's like, and in the same way that we can be like, I'm sad this show isn't playing there anymore, or in the same way that we can be like, I'm sad that guy isn't working the door anymore. We can we can be like, I'm sad that the names are different. Right. It's just different.
They come to like represent a certain time period when that was the name. Like, and that's the other, like you said this in the last episode, I think, of like, oh, the first time I had a drink with Eric Lloyd Morris and got to know him was at this bar called this, and then Boxers, and then it changed to the Spaniard. And it's like, like the name change sometimes means nothing the next day, but within time it comes to mean a different era, a different set of shows, different people who work there, a different like way that the theater run. Like like the names come to represent the eras.
They mean something.
Yeah. It's all in the song. It's really just like, I can't believe this song exists and that Danny Burstein sings it, but it does.
It does. And I really love I'm really happy with the arrangement of this one. This arrangement was really driven by Ian Keggy. And, I think it's really simple and it's like just enough to me. The banjo is, the banjo is there and it makes it sound, it makes it sound evocative without it being like, like a country, like picking away thing. Like you don't immediately go to, like backwoods or something. It feels like it feels more like Rainbow Connection or something. I feel like with the banjo, and then the accordion by Jackie Sanders, which is just like a little bit, and it's not like virtuosic or anything. It's just sort of chords, and it feels homespun in a way that I think is appropriate for the song.
Totally.
For sure. And the backups are sung by the people who sang them originally.
And then the car production of 52.
The
road
mobile
trip.
Rehearsal studio. Eric and Molly and Jason.
Yeah. Thank you for writing this song.
Thanks for asking me to write it. 52. Hey, thanks so much for listening or watching to my podcast. Do me a favor and go to wherever you just listen to or watch this thing and subscribe or like or give us a great rating or review, and then head to bpn.fm/album to find out even more information about this podcast, more ways to watch, more ways to listen, and check out my album. Thanks so much for hanging out.
Album Podcast is executive produced by Liz Armstrong, produced by Dori Berenstein, Alan Seals, Kim Garris, and the rest of the team at the Broadway Podcast Network. Be sure to visit bpn.fm/album for both audio and video versions of this podcast and to listen to Album.
Remember.